What is going on? So you end up with this paper launch from NVIDIA, and everybody wants the latest and greatest. Okay, I get it. I thought, man, why don't I get one too? But since you can't get them, and you realize that the 4090s and even the 4080s were reasonable cards to hold on to, and maybe you don't need to upgrade this particular go around. But there's a heck of a market out there. I mean, it's not scalpers, it's just capitalism at its finest. Look at these prices. There's a 3080, 3090 for $921. 3090 overclock for $900. There's a 5090 for $4,200. I clicked on that 2 minutes later and it was gone. Somebody got that. So, I mean, there's a 4080 Supreme for $1,180. And then when I'm actually looking at prices today, that's a good price. The prices are like almost $1,500 now for the 4080s. Talk about a miscalculation on my part. You think the new series is coming out and then the other series will decrease in value somewhat. But thanks to the paper launch, questionable performance, I mean, it's there. But look at the price tag for these things. You've got a 4090 for $3,000. The card was released for less than $2,000. And I thought that was high. There's a 4090 Founders for $2,400. And people are getting these prices. A 4080 Super for $1,200. Asus Tough Gaming 3090 for over $1,000. I wonder if that's sold out. Not a 3090. Should I sell the 3090? I mean, I'm in awe of these prices and disgusted at the same time. And I realize it's the race to get the latest and greatest tech and to want to be competitive. And if you're in the enthusiast market, this is kind of what we do. We want the latest and greatest. And I really don't blame people for the desires. But I guess maybe the question is it needed? And I know that's a horrible thing to say right now, because maybe these situations, maybe that's not the right group I'm talking to. But maybe I have a 3080 Founders Edition. I've got a 3080 12 gig in my sim rig. And I also have a 3090. And I'm wondering, do I need to upgrade? Am I getting carried away? And I thought, well, maybe the 4090 is going to be good for me, because there are some issues with the 5090 that we're starting to realize. But the question is the 30 series still valid? I can't speak for anything other than a 3080 12 gig or a 3090. That's all that I have in my possession right now. I should have kept my lower end 40 series cards, but I got rid of them. I thought I'd be able to grab a 4090 for a reasonable price. It doesn't look like it now. And even snag a 5090 somewhere down the line. Now, I'm sure that that's gonna happen. But guys, with these prices, you're praying for competition. When NVIDIA has the market and AMD is all but bowed out and can't find a set, and then NVIDIA has us by ours, I mean, Intel doesn't have the market. They don't have the GPU. AMD was our best bet. Boy, we really need some competition in the market. That being said, NVIDIA is sort of running the show right now. But the question is, are we chasing frame rates? Are we chasing benchmarks? Or are we really looking at the level of productivity that cards can provide us? Are we looking at the productivity that the current market or even a previous generation can still provide? That's what this quick video is going to be about. I've got some other things coming out But I thought, my goodness, with these prices and with everything that's going on with this 50 series right now, here, check this out. Look at this connect.
It is above 140 degrees Celsius on some of these after 4 minutes.
So is his cable bad?
And if we're filming into the 12-volt high power connector of the card, which is a bit more difficult to do, I also spotted already 90 degrees Celsius here, not even after 10 minutes. I separated the wires to make it a little bit simpler. So the left ones are ground wires, and all the right ones are the ones that are carrying the 12 volts. This means there has to be an uneven current distribution. So we have to measure the current with this current clamp. This wire goes above, 23 amps with this wire.
So I've linked his video in the description. I don't want to take his content. This was just way too compelling not to share. If you haven't not subscribed to this gentleman or you haven't seen this video, please. His content is invaluable. You must go see it. It's a shameless plug for Roman and Der Bauer and his channel. So please check that out. But there's obviously issues because he's a developer of products, Thermal Grizzly products, highly respected, a very quality control is the name of the game there, and that's not user error. So there's definitely something going on. It's very concerning. And then Bolzoid, I believe, from Actually Hardcore Overclocking, did a follow-up video to his video.
4090s and the 5090s. And these do this. And if you're looking at that and going like, man, that looks incredibly stupid, that's because it is.
Just take a minute and let this set in.
All of our wires come in, get combined into one big just blob of 12 volts. Then that goes through two parallel shunt resistors. I don't know why there's two of them. And then that gets combined right back into one big blob of 12 volts. So in this scenario, you could cut like 5 of the wires, and you would go from 6 times 100 watts to 1 times 600 watts. And then, of course, this is going to catch fire. Also, even if all of your cables are plugged in, there is physically no way for these GPUs to current balance the connector, because as far as the GPU is concerned, it is one blob of 12 volts.
So yeah, those two gentlemen are doing great work. I wish I had cards to help contribute. The best thing I can do is to, when I notice this stuff, push you to their channel, try to do my best to get the information to you as well. As much as I would love to have a 4090 right now and a 5090 both, man, I was really looking for some decent pricing. But hey, maybe I'm going to let the dust settle on the 5090s for a minute and see what NVIDIA does about this. I mean, I hope they do something. If you have the quality of individual that Roman or DeBauer is, that's pointing out issues, and Bill Zoid that was basically looking at the way the circuitry was made, these two people are experts in the field. And how are you just going to ignore it? I guess it's possible, but we'll see what happens. So I guess, do you wait, or you just roll the dice, take your chances? I guess if a good enough deal shows up, roll the dice, take your chances, see what happens. I mean, they did release them. I guess you've got warranties, you've got returns, you've got recalls if we go that route. But do it at your own peril. Make your own decisions, whatever you're comfortable with. But the 30 series, is it still relevant? Let's look at some benchmarks and see if we can still play games while this madness ensues on these unobtainable products right now. Okay, so just for your benchmark kings and queens out there, let's run a little bit of Port Royal. And this is, again, the 3080 Founders. These aren't going to be groundbreaking numbers, right? I mean, this is a couple series ago, so I'm not going to sit here and make claims that these are the best video cards. You should run out and buy one. But just trying to give it a frame of reference. I mean, I believe that you can still play games with this, but you have to turn some settings down, but you still get an enjoyable time playing games. And it might give you some time, some breathing room to let all this ridiculous hysteria about these 40 series prices being, I mean, they're making their money back and then some, right? The cards, to my understanding, weren't released at $2,000. They were released at like $1,700 in SRP. So these people bought, for example, 4090 Founders Editions, used them for 2.5 years, and put them back on the market to sell them for more money than what they paid for them originally. Good for them. Good for them. And the 50 series, just like the Bauer said, I don't know why we even bother talking about MSRP. It's almost a worthless number anymore because they come out with a number. You know it's going to be higher. Okay, I fast forward a little bit there. So you can see these numbers, a 10,700 bench score. It's interesting, I guess maybe they're pushing 3080s. I mean, this isn't an overclocked pushed card at all. This is put a water block on it, make it run as cool and easy as you possibly can, and then enjoy the performance that you get from it. And then finally, the last thing we'll run here is a little bit of Time Spy. And again, it's a 3080 Founders, so I'm going to jump right ahead to, it's reasonable, right? Reasonable. I like this benchmark too. This is fun. What are your creative idea? But you can see your FPS down at the bottom. We're looking 80s, 90s FPS. So, and you know, it's not unreasonable. You can still make games work with this. So I think that's what this video is really all about. It's not about, hey, look at me in the 3080 so great. I mean, it's a 3080 Founders Edition. It's a nice card, but it still runs things, but it's not the latest and greatest. And maybe we're just going to sit and wait a little bit. If you've got the opportunity to sit and wait a little bit, maybe that's the best option. Unless you've got a lot of money burning holes in your pocket. Now, if that's the case, please, I will leave a link in the description. I can't even. Anyway, so the Time Spy was 17,118. So again, not great, but you know, it says estimated performance, Battlefield, 150 plus FPS at 1440 Ultra. Gives you graphics score, CPU score. It'll be interesting to see how the K versus the KS stacks up in here. I haven't played around a lot with that yet, but hey, we'll see what we can do. So let's look at a benchmark here. Here's the Monster Hunter Wilds, and this is on my 3080 Founders Edition. It's got a water block on it. It stays cool. Never really crosses 50 degrees. Memory temps. This is on my office rig, on my i9 14900 KS. And I do have 96 gig of memory in this. It's 6800 speed memory in this, but for the most part, look, I ran this at 1080 and I was getting 80 FPS, and this is at 1440. I'm averaging over 60 FPS, and this looks like a good play. So then you ask yourself, why am I chasing a 50 series? Well, okay, you can chase the 50 series if you want the latest and greatest, and you got to have over 100, 120. You want a game at 4K at over 100 frames per second. If that's what you want and that's what you're going after, then okay, you're in the middle of that. But maybe I'm just trying to bring this back down to reality a little bit here and say, okay, look at the FPS on just the 3080. I'm going to do some testing on the 3080, 10, 12, and 3090s. I mean, I don't know if that drives the price of the 30 series up, but they look kind of stupid high right now. I'm not sure you should buy any video card right now, unless you just absolutely have to have one. One of yours died, or you're building your first computer. Well, I'm really sorry. You're looking at a market that is quite interesting. But nonetheless, you've got good color, good motion. Can you get better graphics? Absolutely, you can get better graphics. But this looks great. Really, I mean, it looks great. And here's a section that you're just sort of walking through town. There's nothing really wrong with this gameplay. It's not jumpy. I'm going to let you see the end of this benchmark so that you'll see the average frames per second. But you're right at 60 frames per second. But it's not like one of those games it seems that you're going to just hate playing it at 60 frames a second. It looks reasonable. I mean, the next thing I'm going to be doing is plugging in my 3090. And what I'll do is I'm gonna probably do some of these tests in not a KS, but I do want to compare what my frame rates and everything are with a K versus a KS. See if there's anything about the bottlenecking that comes into play. But this looks reasonable, and from a gameplay perspective, and then I'm also going to be looking at some productivity. But let's check another one out. Black Myth Wukong. So they have a benchmark tool for this particular game. Just to show you what settings I'm using here. It's a 1440 monitor. I'm not gaming in 4K yet. I do have DLSS enabled. But not frame generation. Of course, the 3080 Founders says it doesn't support DLSS frame generation. But these are not the latest and greatest drivers. I have more information on that. I don't believe those are good for us. There have been some issues with that new set of drivers, and even reported some issues on the 40 series. And I can tell you, it's messed up my test bench because I plugged a 3090 in, and I believe that those drivers cause serious problems with that test bench in my 3090. But I do have the 3090 running flawlessly with an older set of drivers in my sim rig. So, that being said, now this game you're going to notice a little bit more stuttering than you did with the previous. But both of these games is going to be less than 60 frames per second. So you might not have the best of gameplay in this particular game. But again, it's not horrible. Could it be better? Yes, it could be better. I'm going to move this forward a little bit. You can see the foliage, the trees. I mean, again, it's reasonable. And then this is my settings. So again, you are less than 60 frames a second. I got a whopping max of 62, minimum of 43. On a 3080, you can see the driver is 560.94 in this system. I'll be honest, I'm not playing with the Office rig like I'll play with the other systems, but this test was just too easy to run because that's what was in here. But there's your 1440 monitor and your very high settings. And it doesn't seem like it'd be horrible. But again, maybe you would want something just a little bit more beefy than the 3080. And then maybe you maybe try to turn down to 1080p to see, turn down the settings, but this was the only setting that was available here is to benchmark it to 1440. So that being said, I'll be interested in seeing what the 3090 does. And I'm also going to compare and put this, once I square away my test bench, put this in the 14900K instead of a KS with a little bit less RAM and see how it really affects the frames per second. Because it's not all GPU. Your other system components do play a role. And I'd be interested in seeing that. Okay, so that's the video I wanted to get out to you guys. Looking at a little bit of the 3080. I'm going to look at the 3090. Going to do some more productivity benchmarks. Something besides the few games. I've got some other productivity things I want to try to release and get that out to you. But in the meantime, enjoy the madness. Stay safe. God bless.